exposing them and putting in the catheter. So we're going to actually get them all set up. And you will learn that you cannot put a catheter in unless you position your patient appropriately. So their legs can't stay like this and you actually get in there. So make sure you position your patients. These patients don't position as gracefully as we would like. And I kind of try to put their knees down a little bit like this and out. Female patients typically tend to be the hardest, obviously, because we have a choice of insertion sites. So we have the urethra, we have the vagina, and then we have the rectum. Make sure you pick the right one. So what I always tell the students is to aim high. We're going in the urethra. We don't want to go in the vagina. You're not going to get urine out of there. And hopefully you're not getting it out of somebody's rectum either. So as you can see, it has, the division there, which is quite obvious for you to see, urethra, vagina, and rectum. I can assure you that it won't be that obvious on a real person. Okay? So I'm going to get my patient positioned. She's all set, and then I'm going to come and prep my kit. So everybody should have a kit like this. Make sure you keep all of your stuff in there and you know how to package it back if you want to reuse it for checkoff. Not cooperating. Oh, that's a little... Alright, so you guys remember your borders on your sterile step? How much of a sterile border do you have?
1 inch.
Away.
And is she reaching across that in any way?
No.
No. That's exactly why she's spinning it around like that, so she doesn't have to reach across the sterile field.
You reach across, you break the sterile field.
And you'll fail.
Alright, so this is my whole sterile field.
This is one of those times where you need to know your patient, what they can do, because this is a good buddy procedure. We put in a catheter in integrity in the last class. It took 6 of us to hold the patient, to hold the flap back, to get the legs open, me to hold the patient open, and the student to put the catheter in.
Yeah.
Be aware of your patient.
It happens.
Yeah, you see that. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take off my sterile gloves right here. And I don't like these gloves, but I didn't get the other ones, so I'm gonna try and attempt to use these. If they don't work, I'll get a different set. Hey Paula, would you give me another set of the 6s down there? I can't do these. I'm set myself up for failure with those. They're too floppy. There should be 6 and a half, 6 and a half or 6. I can do either one. Just no 9s or 8s. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. And I would have a trash can there. I wouldn't be just throwing stuff like that. So these came out of here, pretend. And I'm going to go ahead and open up my sterile gloves now. Now, if this overlaps to here, am I worried about that? No, because I have a 1-inch border. But if it does this, am I worried about it?
Yes.
Yes. So make sure you don't overlap, because some of the students do that. In my experience in nursing, I would suggest that if you have especially women patients that are sneezing or coughing, And I've had kids that you wear a splash guard on your face to cover your eyes. You got an 80-year-old female patient that's in for bronchitis and she's coughing and sneezing, you're gonna get peed in. Your face is you're gonna get peed on. So wear your splash guards. Okay. All right. So next thing is I have my little drape coming out here. Am I sterile completely now?
Yes.
All right. So I'm completely sterile. This is gonna be my sterile drape. If you notice on these sterile drapes, they're kind of fuzzy on the top and shiny on the back here. Okay. The shiny side goes down because these are waterproof. So what I do is grab these little things like such. It's sterile. And I just kind of drop it there. Sterile and sterile, right?
Yes.
Okay. We have the option, I'm not turning my back on my sterile field either. To the side of me. This is another drape so I can extend my sterile field even more. And I just kind of drop that. And I move it here. Okay. There are going to be these that are in your kits. They're optional if you want to use them. I do not. And this kind of goes over, I'll just show you, it kind of goes over the area of the male or the female. I don't use them. I kind of think they're just a waste of space. So it's up to you. Next thing is I'm going to bring this over here, and I'm going to go ahead and look at my kit. I'm still within my sterile field. So, number one, you have 2 packets, and most facilities don't have this option anymore. They just have the chlorhexidine because of the iodine allergies. So you'll have these, so it's important that you ask your patient you have any allergies to iodine or shellfish, because if you put this on their genital area and they have allergies to that, you're going to be working the rest of the evening, and they're not going to like you either. So you'll ask your patient you have allergies, whatever, you can use it. When you guys do the actual checkoff, you're not going to open these up and dump them. You'll just pretend with these. So you'll do, so my patient is actually allergic to iodine. I'm not going to use this. I'm just going to put it there. I don't need it. I would go ahead and open this up, put it on my cotton balls. You can make sounds if you want it. Put it on there, and I have my cotton balls that are ready here. This is my lube, and this is a key element in Foley's. If you put a Foley in a patient without lube, they are not going to like you. Just going to tell you. Okay? All right. I have my 10cc syringe, and this is saline that's in here. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to come over here, and this is something you must do, is you need to check the bulb on your Foley, which is right here. And I'm going to go ahead and inflate my bulb to make sure it's not defective and that it is working efficiently. And then I'm going to deflate it because you're not going to insert it inflated. Okay? And then some people like to leave the syringe on here. I don't have a problem with that, but just watch, because sometimes, especially with these older products, it'll start sucking the saline in or pulling it out. So just be cautious to watch it. You may be asked on checkoffs, what Foley, what size Foley are you putting in? On this little print thing right here, it tells you. It tells you on the front too on the package, but you look here and it tells you 14 French. And next to that it says 5 to 10 milliliters. So what 5 to 10 milliliters mean is the minimal capacity is 5 and the maximum is 10. So that means you don't feel froggy one day and say, you know what, I'm going to put 20 cc's of saline in here because I just really don't want it to fall out. Because you're going to pop it. And, you know, so 5 to 10 is your maximum amount. I usually just put, if there's 10 and it holds 10, I put 10. Okay? So you're going to want to make sure you know how to answer that correctly. If I need a sterile a sterile urine afterwards, you can get the first urine out of this bag and send it for a urine specimen. Only the first. Because it's sterile, the bag's sterile, it's fresh urine that's coming out, you can send that to the lab. If the doctor comes up 4 hours later and says, you know what, I want to repeat that UA, CNS, then you'll actually have to get the container and you'll have to go in, and we've got this little area right here, on here. You have to clean it with the alcohol. It's a needleless system, and then you can draw the urine out of there after it's clean, but you can no longer take anything out of the bag because it's contaminated after that. When the Foley is completed and it's put in, you guys have these hooks on the back. Those hooks are only allowed to be on the frame of the bed because the frame does not move. The rails move and everything else does, but the frame does not. And you will fail for that. Because if you put on the rail and then somebody comes in and drops the rail, guess what happens to the Foley? And they're not going to like you for that. Okay? So, I've prepped my bulb. I have all my stuff done. And then what I go ahead and do, because this is all sterile, right? I go ahead and get everything ready because I'm ready to go. I'm going to take this off. And I'm going to take my lube, and you'll demonstrate just like this, and say I would put this into the lube so that it's lubed up when I'm ready for it. And then I just set that in there and let the lube soak in. Okay? Any questions thus far? Okay. So then I'm going to put this little cleaning area thing back here. I've already dumped this on there, and now I'm going to move this from here to my next sterile field. Obviously, keep in mind, if you have a combative patient or a patient that is has dementia or moves a lot, this would not be an optimal candidate to move this onto the bed. Okay? Not everybody is as good as she is. So I'm going to transfer this over here. I'm going to put this right here. Okay? So, both sterile still? Okay. So, depending on if you're left-handed or right-handed, I'm kind of weird. I only eat left-handed, do everything else right-handed, but I can do it both ways. So I think I'm doing this the right-handed way, but I'm not sure. If you're right-handed, you'll have to tell me. So next thing is, this is going to be my clean hand or dirty hand that I'm not going to use. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to come down here and tell the patient, I'm going to touch you down here. You're going to feel some cold stuff, so I'm going to go ahead and touch down here, spread the labia majora so that I can actually see the urethra opening. Okay? Some people will say you'll see it wink at you. I've been doing this for a while. Nothing's ever winked at me down there. I'm just saying. So, this is still sterile, yes?
Yes.
So I'm going to pick up my first cotton ball, and this is how I do it. I do one swipe down the right side, okay? Yes?
Yes.
And you have an option where you want to put this, okay? You can get an area like this, so I would swipe down there, and I'd come back around like this and drop it there. Or some people actually swipe down the other side like this, and some people just put it back here. If it's not cross-contaminating, it really doesn't matter, but I like to just put them in here just to keep them out of the way. You see how I'm reaching around my sterile field? Okay? So one swipe on the right, one swipe on the left, and then I take another one, and I get it, the most saturated one, and I do one good swipe down the middle. And then I get rid of that. If you want to use the other two, that's optional. As long as you get it clean, that's the most important part. And a lot of times you'll get a lot of smegma and discharge and all kinds of stuff. So this is still sterile, yes?
Yes.
Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and move this. I don't need it anymore, so I can just set it right back here. I'm done with that.
Are the tweezers technically still sterile?
I don't need them anymore.
Okay.
They are sterile because they've only been on my hand, and the tips are only contacting with that with the patient.
Okay.
So I don't need any of that anymore. I'm on to this. So notice that my hand has not left her vagina. Yes? Because once I let go of the labia majora, what's it going to do? It's going to close back up, and then you're going to have to reclaim. So next, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my catheter here. These things are very floppy and flimsy, so when you take them out and stuff, get a hold of them, or you're going to fling pee everywhere. Okay. Same as going in. Now, a big thing is you want to keep this sterile. If you do one of these and hit the leg, you just ruined your kit. So that's why it's important to get control. If you have to wrap it, however you have to do it, but you have to insert it. So next, I'm going to insert. When you're inserting, this sterile hand is only inserting the catheter. It cannot touch the vagina. It has to stay sterile, sterile and sterile. How far am I going in? Anybody tell me?
3 to 2.
How far?
1.5 to 2.
On a
And
female,
3 to 4,
insertion.
I'm sorry, 3 to 4 inches.
Or,
Until urine flows through.
okay, so I'm going to say right now I have urine, okay? So, I'm going to stop here. Am I still sterile? Is this tube still sterile?
Yes.
What's inside the patient is not sterile, but what I have a hold of still is sterile, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do I need to be sterile anymore with this hand or anything? No?
No.
This is not sterile, right?
Right.
So what I do, and this is how I do it, this hand has got the patient's flora on it. I come around, I don't need sterile anymore, and I grab my syringe, and I go ahead and inflate my syringe. Ooh, that didn't sound good. What you'll have to do, guys, is you're going to have to disconnect this after you inflate it or to suck it back out of the dummies, okay? Just disconnect it from there. And now I'm going to go ahead and pull back a little bit, and it's secured. One of the questions I'll ask you is, you see I still have a hold of this. When I inflate this, if the patient says, oh my gosh, that hurts, what am I going to do? I'm going to deflate the balloon, yes, and then I'm going to go ahead and advance it another inch or two, and then reinflate. So that's why it's important to keep a hold of this sterile, not touching the vagina. You can't do these numbers. I've had students go like this, and then they'll reach down like this. No. You have to reach around, because this syringe is going in the trash. I care less about the syringe if it gets dirty. But this is what has to stay clean. Because if I have to advance that 2 more inches, if I touched it with this hand that's not sterile, Can I advance it? I can't. So that hand is completely designated to hold it. This inflates it if they complain of it. Then I would deflate it and I'd advance it a couple more inches and then go ahead and reinflate and make sure it's comfortable for the patient. So your right hand is totally designated to this catheter. And when you're inserting it like this, I've had students go like this. You can't touch the patient. Even though it's their flora, you want to stay sterile as possible. Okay? So everything's secured. I don't need to be sterile anymore. I'm going to take my bag out here. And I'm not for sure if you guys have the Foley stat locks in your kits or not. But most facilities have them. We do not have them in these. So when you secure the Foley, do we want to secure it like this?
No.
No, you want to give them a little flack. So I usually put it here. And the Foley stats, they swivel like this. So if it moves, the thing kind of moves with it. If your facility doesn't have it, when you put foam tape down to kind of hold it down. The biggest thing is we don't put foam tape on this because it occludes the tubing. So you want to put it in a spot that's not, a harder spot like right here. You can actually secure it here, okay? And then I would go ahead and make sure it's not kinked up and it's down there. And it actually goes on this part right here, which is the frame of the bed. It does not move, okay? The little hoops on the frames. Then if I need a sterile specimen, I can get it out of here just the first time only, and you'll be asked that in checkoffs. How many times can you get first time only to come out of the bag? Then the bag's contaminated. Okay? If I need another one, this is my spot here. I'm just going to clean it and draw out of it. I'm not going to disconnect all this because it's going to be a mess. Okay? So everything's there. What am I going to document about this? I'm going to document what I did, what type of procedure. So I did a Foley insertion under what type of technique?
Sterile.
Sterile or aseptic technique. I inserted a 14 French Foley. Okay. I visualized clear yellow urine upon insertion. Inflated the tube with approximately 10 mils of sterile saline. It's secured to what leg I secured it to, how the patient tolerated the procedure. Did they tolerate it well? A lot of people don't. And then I'm going to give a description of the urine and the amount. 300 cc's of clear yellow urine. Collected out of the bag initial urine. So those are some things you're going to want to document. Biggest thing is that you claim that you did it under aseptic technique and that you do it under aseptic technique. If you don't put that and it goes to court, they're going to say, well, what technique did you use because you didn't chart anything? So make sure that you understand and that you let them know that you understand that it's under aseptic technique. So doctor comes up now and he writes an order. He says, go ahead, she's going to go home, take the Foley catheter out. So, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and empty the bag. Okay, you don't want to pull a Foley out when it's 1,000 cc's in the bag because then you got to deal with that too. So I'm going to go ahead and empty the bag out. Then I'm going to come over here, have my patient positioned again. I'm going to take the tape off or the stat lock or whatever. I'm going to have a 10 cc syringe. And you don't always get out 100% what you put in because you guys know that water evaporates even internally from body heat. So the majority of it should come out. If you put in 10, you should get usually about 8 out. Or sometimes if they've had it in for a while, maybe 7. But you want to completely pull until it's all out. So I'm going to connect this, explain the procedure obviously to the patient and all that stuff. This is not sterile, so I would just have clean gloves on for this. And I'm going to pull out everything I put in there. And see, that's only... These things are sticky. I don't want to splash everybody. Alright, well, it's about 7 in there. Well, no, it's not, because it's all the way down at the bottom. Hold on. Sorry, anybody. Good night. Alright, there we go. Alright, so there's about 10, a little bit less. So I pulled that out. Next thing I'm going to do is tell the patient to take a deep breath and hold it, and I'm going to go ahead and take this out. When you take it out, keep a hold of it, because if you yank it out and flip it everywhere, then I'm going to fail you, because there's going to be pee all over you and all over them. So I usually just will take the bag, and I'll set it right up here with me. What is it, Stefan? I'll just set it right here with me, so that I have it right here and I have it all together. And then I go ahead and I just tell them, take a deep breath, and bear down, and I just pull all this out, and pull it straight out like this. And you see how I have this? And I take it like this, and I put all that together, put that bag down, and then I go ahead and pull this off here. Come on. And I'm going to take this one off here. And then you can dispose. That simple. And so a big thing we would want to document when you DC a Foley, number one thing, is it aseptic technique? No. It's a clean technique. How the patient tolerated it, and the number one thing you better have on there is that your tubing was intact. That's going to CYA. Because if you remove it and you don't chart that the tubing was intact, and they come back and have some type of peritoneal infection or something, they're going to say, oh, that could have been caused from a Foley tubing. Where was the documentation stating the tubing was discharged intact? IVs, catheters, anything you put in a patient's body, when it comes out, you must document it was intact. Because if anything gets left behind, you own that. Okay? So, Foley discharged under clean procedure. Patient tolerated well. Foley tubing was intact. And then if you had any urine in there, you'll document that. And then you wash your hands, set your patient back up, cover them up, clean up your mess, and you go. Okay, and obviously, so I would take this step, and if I'm going to do that, I would put clean gloves on just to touch this, because I don't like to touch the Foley bags either, because you never know when they dribble. So I would actually put some just clean gloves on, and I would clean all this stuff up and dispose of it, and get your patient ready. Any questions?
On the insertion part, what point did we put the lube on?
The lube was in there when I prepped the thing. What I do is after I inflate the balloon, I go ahead and remove the sheet, the plastic sheath that comes on them. This right here, I go ahead and remove that, and then what I do is I would open that and stick the tube in, and then just put it back in there and let it sit in there.